right? That you can right follow me right now. So we are discussing here one very important point, which most teachers, of course, are familiar with. This has to do with teaching language skills in general, be it's reading, listening, right, listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Or even vocabulary or structure. There are certain common principles that we have to bear in mind, regardless of the kind of the category, the structure that you're teaching, or the skill that you're teaching, or even the sub skills that you might be targeting. So I have done some research just to pave the ground for discussion together. And I am presenting and sharing about three, models, let's say, or ideas from different resources. One from related to the CTET, right, which has to do with the credibility of teachers, central teachers eligibility tests. So these are some, standards or some principles put by certain exam, let's say, specifications, let's say, or standards that should be considered by teachers in order to get, when they want to get enrolled. So these are some governmental exams designed for recruiting teachers in order to enroll and start teaching in governmental schools. And I found these notions are very, very important to share here. The first one, according to this, to this source or criteria, which is the CTET, grade and teacher eligibility tests. First principle, one of these is the language patterns should be, are normally, for some sort of habits, grades that, the students let's say develops and as a daily, right, as a daily habit. So it's some sort, this is a behavioristic approach again to learning, meaning that learning is kind of habit formation process, which and this is something very important to consider when teaching great students, and particularly great young learners and kids. When teaching young learners and kids, we should bear in mind that we should get them accustomed and use it to certain habits, through drilling, through repetition of certain structures, and something more importantly, when engaging in such a process of developing such habits, is that we should, be careful about the inputs that we are presenting, let's see, to the students. It should be as accurate as possible, because younger learners and kids are learning so fast and they learn whatever, right? So we have to make sure that our input is accurate. Otherwise, students and younger learners in particular are going to develop, mistakes and errors through the time, which are difficult to unlearn. Another great principle related to this reference has to do with the oral approach. I mean, learning, in general, starts from speaking, naturally starts from speaking. Maybe the, babies, when they are born, right, the first thing they do, or the first skill maybe they practice is speaking, right? Crying, and then starting getting engaged in a babbling stage where they start uttering, syllables, and then words, and then sentences. Okay, and this, of course, the natural way of learning, right? So when thinking about teaching great students a certain language, we got to give the the importance to listening and speaking, especially at the early stages. Students need to listen. They need to listen to get exposed to a certain input before they come to read and write and engage in such productive skills. The next principle has to do with the practicing and drilling. As I said before, in order to develop that habit, and learning here is a habit forming process, we need to drill students, to let them repeat, great, and repeat. practice and practice again. And through this habitual, let's say, process, students get familiar, let's say, with the input you are presenting, be it a structure or words or whatever. And through drilling, through the time, the learning becomes automatic for students. It becomes automatic means that they can use a particular structure unconsciously and generate as many sentences as possible, using their background knowledge, the words they have learned, their prior knowledge, and so on. And this is something of great importance. So, and this is something that we really give importance to, right? The question of drilling. We maybe have, have a negative standpoints about, towards drilling and repetition. Such behavioristic skills and audiolingual methods and so on, these are of great, they really work, let's say, for young learners in particular, and teenagers. So it's very important to make sure that students drill and children drill, let's say, the target words and or items or structure enough. The next thing is this notion of natural order of learning. As we said before, listening is the first maybe skill that we practice, and then comes speaking, right? So listening and speaking, they are interrelated actually, right? Babies and children starts, learning through listening. They are exposed to certain inputs, maybe even in the last month before they were born, right? They start listening and so on, and then they start speaking. It's a kind of they have already. And something very important, guys, so is that I have a tangible experience dealing with the paying attention to such to this process, because I got a kid, right, 4 years kid. When he was 3 years old, I decided to teach him English. So what I did personally is that I devoted about like 6 months just for exposure, just to listen to an accurate input, to good English with a clear accents, which of course relevant to his age as a youngster or as a kid. And through the time, after that, great, started interacting with the kid, great, and started speaking, and they can use and come up with words which I have never personally heard, but it doesn't mean that the kid has created the words from his by own, but it's some of the things that he has automatically and unconsciously stored in his memory. So kids, even if they are not speaking yet, great, they are learning, they are storing and memorizing the English sounds and so on. And then comes, of course, the stage or where reading and writing are practiced, especially when they engage in schooling and learning process and so on, this conscious process. Next is this principle of language skills integration. One of the principles of learning, when we learn a language, we don't learn, just one skill or in isolation, but we mostly practice, we can practice more than one skill together, right? We are listening at the same time we're speaking, at the same time, right? When reading, we can write. And so one of the best ways to for an effective teaching and for good learning outcomes is to integrate between skills together. It's very, very important to go this way, for students to have rich input, which is of course varied in terms of skills and and processes. Great. Okay, there is a receptive process, there is a productive process, and so on and so forth. Selection and gradation. Right. One should proceed from simple to difficult learning situations. This is something very common, of course. We should bombard students with different difficulties, with many difficulties at a time, or just jump to the highest or high order situations, and then waiting for, let's say, in outcomes. We have to provide, starting from the easiest thing, from simple things to the most complex. And this, when it comes to reading and writing, for instance, we try to focus on students to produce simple, very, very simple sentences, be it in speaking or in reading and writing. Be able to understand very simple sentences. And then we move to the compound sentences, in which we combine two simple sentences together. Then we can move to the complex sentence. And this is for advanced, upper intermediate students and then advanced students. And then we can move to the, compound complex sentences. So we should start, take into consideration the students' level at this time. Situational approach. English language learning should be communicative, should be learned, through different situations, because this is what makes learning meaningful. Otherwise, learning is not going to be meaningful. It's going to be rote learning. I mean, students are going just to learn for no specific purpose. They're not supposed to exactly, they're not clear about what they are supposed to do. So the best thing is that every task that we design should be situated. It should be contextualized, and through by engaging and involving students in communicative situations. Sometimes in the writing, recently I read, I took a look at a sample of a quiz, in which the teacher requires a student, asks student to write. The composition question was like this: to write a short paragraph about this. This is not a good, composition question, because it's not, there are other elements. It's not well situated. It's not well contextualized. There must be, to show the reason why, in order for such a, composition question or such a situation or a task to be authentic and communicative, it should be in the form of a situation. Why should, let's say, the student write that short paragraph? It's going to be good if we say, for instance, that, okay, this person, right, try to assign roles and give a certain reason why, let's say, the student should write this paragraph or this essay. Next is the imitation. We talked about this before. We say that, drilling and the repetition is one of the main techniques used to, especially for kids to learn. And kids are very known, let's say, to be good imitators. They imitate and they like to repeat, they like to do the same. And, right, they imitate not just the language, but even the behavior, right? Even the behavior. Try to just behave like the way you do, right? So that's why I said we should provide a good model of speech. We should provide an accurate input. If it's about reading and writing, or if it's about speaking and listening, we should be careful about what we present, let's say, to our students, what we provide to them as an input. And of course, using different aids, audiovisual aids, and props, and so on and so forth. Motivation is a very important element, which is relevant to language teaching. Students cannot, learn at all, cannot invest their time and their efforts to learn and new structure or words or whatever, if they are not intrinsically motivated to learn the language. So you should always try to motivate them, try to help them find the reason behind learning. That's one of the most important things, for students to feel, highly motivated to learn. The tasks that you assign should be purposeful, right? Should show the students the purpose behind a certain task. The task itself should be interesting. to the student, and it should match, let's say, the needs of the student. And also you should provide all the necessary needs, be they are cognitive needs, linguistic needs, in addition to the affective, for the students to understand the task and feel comfortable and highly motivated no purpose in a certain task, or if they do not have the necessary tools and linguistic or cognitive requirements and needs or tools that we need in order to do the task, they're not going to take part or perform well in the task. So, for example, you are you want to engage students in a writing task, for instance, to write a short paragraph about something. It may be daily routine or whatever. It depends on the level of students. But if you don't provide them with the necessary words, daily routine words, verbs that that are necessary to write such a paragraph, if you don't provide them with the necessary linking words that they need and the necessary structure to form a correct sentence, so students are just like soldiers who are thrown into or obliged to take part in a battle without arms. So we have to equip students with everything they need, and that's what makes them highly motivated to take part. Accuracy, we talked about that. The input that we provide should be accurate and should be purposeful. And correlation is very important. If teaching learning of English is correlated with the real life situations which are relevant to the students' needs and students' interests and so on, it will take interest in it, right? Students will take interest and will be interested in taking part. Otherwise, the task is going to be useless, and the lesson will not be interesting. So we should always make sure that the task is correlated with lifelong authentic situations or real life situations and so on. The next model, right, which has to do with Brown-Douglas principles of foreign language teaching. This is a great, snapshot from his book, Teaching by Principles: An Interactive Approach to Language Pedagogy. There are some, very, very important concepts here and principles that should be taken into consideration. According to Brown-Douglas, he, in his book, he distinguishes between three categories of principles that should be borne in mind. Cognitive principles, affective principles, and then linguistic principles. Cognitive principles include the notion of automaticity. We talked about that before. We say that when you engage, let's say, learners and students in a habitual learning process, taking into consideration that learning is a kind of habit formation process, through the time they will get accustomed to that input, and they will be able to automatically produce let's say the inputs again, reproduce the inputs accurately as it is, and it becomes part of the learner's prior knowledge, right? And again, we have this notion meaningful learning, right? Meaning that when we're talking about the importance of drilling and repetition and so on, however, we should not, let's say, keep our drills mechanical, always mechanical. They should be meaningful. Meaningful if they are situated, if they are contextualized, and if they are communicative, right? If there is a sense and there is a meaning and there is a reason for taking part in a certain task, then the task or the drills becomes so meaningful. So one of the aspects, the opposite of that meaningful learning, is a rote learning. When we see in most situations in teaching grammar, for instance, we usually just spend time, explaining grammar rules and so on, right, directly, without any communication, any meaningful, let's say, learning. So that's kind of rote learning. We have to make sense of everything that we do, provide students with dialogues, conversations, communicative situations, so that they can exactly understand, get involved and understand what they are doing. In this case, we can talk about meaningful learning. The anticipation of reward is very important, using different rewards of many types. I personally use some of the kinds of rewards that you can do is to provide, encourage students, with the variety of ways. It's verbally, right? Okay, you encourage students with giving them a compliment, right? So, oh, very good, you've done a good job, and so on. This is something very important. Students need feedback, right, to reinforce what they have learned and reinforce what they have produced. Okay, so that it can be reproduced again and again the same way if it's a correct output, right? So if students are anticipating some reward, they can take part and get engaged. Otherwise, they are not going to. It's not the task is not going to be fun. Intrinsic motivation. This is something very important. We talked about before, right? Basically, students should find, the reason behind, let's say, taking part in a certain task. Should be highly personally motivated to learn, because they are equipped with all the necessary items or structures or tools that they need. And there is this question of strategic investments. I mean, at this time, students, when they are highly motivated and intrinsically motivated, they can, let's say, invest time and invest their knowledge and invest their efforts in order to enjoy what they are learning and, let's say, develop personally and cognitively. The next principles has to do with the affective side of learning. I mean, students should learn in a certain situation in which there is no stress, there is no anxiety, and this question of language ego, right? We should not risk, let's say, the students' self-esteem. Students, when they are learning, even adult learners, when they are learning a certain language, they can make a mistake and they can seem just like babbling infants, right? So we should not, mock at students or underestimate them when they are making mistakes. It's very natural. Students should understand that it's a natural process. It's very normal to make errors, and errors are the signs that you are, or the mistakes are the signs that the learning is taking place. Self-confidence, risk-taking, encouraging students to take a risk, and also the language culture connection. I mean, we should raise students' awareness that there is an intertwined relationship between language and culture. When we're teaching a certain language, we usually try to teach some or share some of the aspects, cultural aspects of that language. And I think this, when students are aware of these aspects, they can, let's say, learn the language better and use it the right way, right? Because they understand how, let's say, the natives are using the language in different situations. And the last principles has to do with the linguistic principles. Students need to, to meet all the linguistic needs, the structures, the vocabulary items, and all the language items. They should meet all of these things in order to engage in a certain language skill. The native language effects. Some of the aspects related to this principles is that, when students are learning a new language, a second language, normally and naturally the first language, the first internalized linguistic system might have an effect, let's say, on the second language they are learning, maybe in terms of structure or pronunciation or language use or style and so on, right? Interlanguage, this is something really relevant to this, right? Okay, there is some kind of interlanguage, one language interferes, the first language interferes in the other. And voila, right? The last thing here has to do with communicative competence. Students' ability to communicate using the language correctly and using the right words and using the right structure, and communicate, expressing their own thoughts, ideas, and emotions, and behave in a certain situation. This is what makes really learning meaningful and communicative. And these are some of the principles that tutors in general should take into consideration when teaching, be it online or offline. There is no difference between both modes of learning, except that there are some technical considerations that we'll be discussing together when it comes to teaching online. Next, and the last one, the last concept here I would like to share has to do with the 5C standards of language teaching and learning. There are certainly, it's very common in the literature of English language teaching. The 5Cs when teaching a certain language, second language in particular, we have, it's going to be good if we bear in mind, certain principles or standards, including communication. Communication meaning that in a lesson, be it listening or speaking or writing or reading, some communication should exist there. If there is no communication, if the students didn't take some time to communicate, to talk and interact maybe with these peers and so on, then the lesson is not that successful at all, right? Students should have enough time to communicate. And also cultures here means that students should also be aware of the cultural aspects, let's say, of the language that they are learning. And we got connections. It has to do with the connection between the English language, the subjects that students are learning, together with other disciplines and other subjects. As in the case when you are teaching English and you try to incorporate and involve other notions which are parts of mathematics or parts of physics or whatever, right? You may be teaching numbers as an English lesson, but at the same time try to involve very simple mathematical equations. Okay, so that's what we call connections, connecting between disciplines, because disciplines are complementary. They're not in isolation. And comparisons here, it means here comparing the linguistic and cultural system of the target language that students are learning with their own let's say with their own language and culture. This is something very, very important for students to be widely aware, let's say, of the aspects of language and the differences between their own language and sometimes they will find they develop this linguistic awareness when they find that some words maybe in their own language also exist in the target language. Others maybe, great, there might be some differences in terms of pronunciation or whatever, and also the cultural aspects which might be different or similar to a certain extent. And communities here, right, meaning that what students learn in the classroom should, the English that they learn, the language they learn, the different functions maybe they learn should be used. English should be used beyond the classroom. And they should also use it, for the sake of enrichment and personal enjoyment, to do something with the language, to enjoy reading, grades beyond the classroom, or do anything else with the language. Okay, so guys, these are different.
This point, so do I have this point of communities?
Yes.
Has to do with correlation that you mentioned earlier. They correlate the teaching learning with real life. So they take the English language outside of the classroom.
Community. That's it. Yeah. It has to do with communities here. Yes. Yeah. Try to correlate to use the language not just inside the classroom but beyond the classroom, right? Yeah. Outside in real life, right? Using the language to do something else, to do something with the language, not just learning for the sake of learning. These are more details which are relevant to this, and that's it, right? So guys, we just need to discuss and this is just to pave the ground for you to raise questions and add more ideas to discuss together. As for technical considerations, we'll discuss this point, inshallah, right, tomorrow when you are put, let's say, in such a situation, right, to teach online and so on. Let's see some of the troubles that you may go into, right, and see how to fix them, inshallah, right? Okay, guys, so the moderator is not here, so feel free, your other moderators, whoever has a certain idea to add is okay. So I try to focus on the principles and notions that should exist when teaching and so on, right? Not the methodologies, right, of teaching, reading, or writing, or you are familiar with this. Mostly they go through 3 basic steps, and this is not rigid. I mean, methodology to follow. It's not, permanent or something that we have to stick to, because normally learning because learning is not linear. Let's say it's not a linear process. It doesn't go just this way, right? There should be 3 steps: introduction, and then, right, or presentation, practice, and then, right, but this is traditional way, right? But normally the natural ways that we see that our kids are learning, right, just playing at the same time they are listening to TV, at the same time they are playing with doing puzzles. So this is learning, right? Takes different ways, and the input comes from different ways. But what we do at school within a formal setting is that we try to organize our knowledge, and one of ways to organize our knowledge is to stick to some of the methods that we had, right, and then try to just have a certain one purpose, and then, or 3 or determinate steps and so on, right, so that we can be able to measure, let's say, the learning outcomes. Otherwise, I see that kids, right, are learning in a very free way without any specific purpose in particular. Guys, feel free to interfere, please. And of course, we have to pay attention to the time, so that we need to schedule, let's say, the online demo lessons for tomorrow. That's it, guys. Schedule the demo lessons, and sharing some English resources here and materials, including to demo lesson planning. I mean, right, each one is going to tell us about, what is in his mind, the lesson maybe that he's going to prepare, or maybe give you the okay enough time, right, to think about that.
So thanks a lot.
Welcome.
I think we cannot possibly go teaching online without being aware of the language, without being aware of language principles and some even methods.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, from my humble experience, teaching some people online, individual classes, what I personally go about for is that I expose them to some dialogues, and from those dialogues we have what we can call opportunistic learning. Is that I seize the opportunity of the dialogue to speak about the theme, or to discuss the problem and why, and I insert the 4 WH questions.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime, when and where and how and what and why. Mm-hmm. So generally, basically, it's about communication.
Yeah, sure.
Introducing, giving the chance to students to discuss and share their ideas.
Yeah, it should be a learner. The lesson should be learner-centered. This notion of learner-centeredness is very important, Greg. Sometimes, especially, I was just one of my friends was with me here, right, yesterday, and we were discussing, and he was telling me, "Oh, sorry, Greg," because he is recently has become an LT supervisor, and he was visiting a teacher, and the novice teacher, the whole lesson was about the teacher, right? The teacher seems that he was just concerned with his own way of teaching, with his own language. And then at the end, right, my friend asks him, right, it's you are the only learner, right? I mean, let's see in this lesson, right?
Yeah.
Forgot about the learner, right? You are the learner.
Yeah.
You practice your English, you practice your skills, you did this and this, right? But how much time did the students talk and so on, and to what extent has learned something?
It's hard. I mean, to have students, I mean, speak more than their teachers speak. But if a teacher succeeds in motivating the learner to speak, he's already taken it a step further.
Yeah, sure.
So
I really wish to share some samples of lessons, very short clips, video clips with students, just to get an idea, right, of how students interact. And okay, let's see if it's possible to do that. Yes, guys, if you have anything to add, great. Otherwise, I can share. Great. Circle, great, very good. Yes, okay.
Hello, everyone.
Samples, yes. Come on.
hello.
Hello.
And thank you, Seb Duet, for the presentation. It was really informative and instructive. And you did really talk about some of the principles which every teacher should have an idea about. And you're talking about, how language, how our teaching students should be students pick up language, informally, like mother tongue. So this is really amazing. So the question that I have, so how can we make online teaching familiar, or let's say equal to how learners actually pick up the language informally? Are there any ways or techniques that we can use in order to get our learners speak and pick up the language easily online?
Great, yeah.
Apart from
this is the point
offline classes.
Yes.
Excuse me, and my colleagues, I have to quit. I have to leave because I have a client.
It's fine if you have some commitments. It's okay, no problem, no worries.
At 9 o'clock, so I got to prepare something before I.
All right, it's okay, it's okay. Okay, guys. Okay, I think the question that Mr. Mohammed Great has raised is of great importance, great, and he's trying to, try to make the ends meet, right? The first end is learning, right? Two processes to meet together, which are a bit different, right? We learned from literature that they are quite 100% different, which is this learning process and the acquisition process. We say learning is an unconscious process. It's the one that takes place at school, but acquisition is a bit different. And it's an effortless process, and it is effective, more effective, of course, than any other process, because students are learning naturally, at ease, freely, great, and so on. How can we bring this home learning, right, as they make students learn the second language as they have learned, let's say, their mother tongue? This is a big challenge, right? And they have a personal experience to share, actually, right? Because I got my, as I talked about my kid, right? I got my 4 years kid. When he was 3 years old, I decided to teach him. I had in mind, I should teach him the English language, but of course not the way we do, right, at let's say at school. Come in and then sit down, right? Okay, let's go to the lesson. No, right? just what I have in mind is I learned from literature that exposure is very important. If the students doesn't expose to the language, is not going to speak the language. If we don't listen very well, we can't speak very well. And next, later on, if we can't read very well, we can't write very well. So listening and speaking, these are, as I said before, in terms of the learning order, these are the first two skills that we should practice first. But what I did, I didn't teach him at all, but I exposed him to rich English inputs, clear inputs, videos, right? We know that kids right now are addicted to TV and all this stuff. So at least expose him to something good, right? From which he is going to learn. I expose him to animated anime, right, and English videos and so on, different episodes which are that fit his level. After a certain long period of like 6 months, I know that of course, we know that the human mind is, as Chomsky said, is designed to is equipped with that language acquisition device. So later on, I just interact with my kid and so on, and he comes out with sentences, with words I have never heard. It doesn't mean that he invented them, but he heard them somewhere, either from the tablets where I have installed many English apps that he practices on a daily basis, or from TV, or from mobile phone, or a certain video, or whatever. Later on, what I discover is that when I go back, when I heard the word, there is a word which I have never heard before, right? One day he uttered the word and I didn't know what it means. Actually, maybe teachers who are familiar with high school, curriculum, right, are going to know the meaning, right, of the word. It's very simple. It's clumsy, right? Oh. Well, I did something, right, to my kid, right? And every time, whenever I do something that he doesn't like, right, it's some sort of insult between two brackets, right? He said, Daddy, you're so clumsy. You're so clumsy. What does mean clumsy, right? I looked for the word. I know what the word means. And then later on, I found that the word is frequently repeated in, series of, episode of animes, which I let him watch every time, every day. So we need to expose. The exposure is very, as I said, teaching is not linear, right? We need to create an atmosphere in which there is something very important, a rich input. I don't care when it comes to my lessons here online. No, I don't follow a specific plan. I have an idea, yes, I have an idea, something that I want to teach and so on, but I can do whatever, right? Maybe I just follow my students sometimes. Sometimes they like something, they may say something, I may ask them about something. You may say, so you try to make use of whatever, right? To make it natural and so on. I don't want to talk a lot. I want to hear from you too, right? And inshallah, right, I can show you some samples of short video clips with some students from Saudi Arabia. Just to have an idea of how I do things, and inshallah it's going to be good if we hear from experiences too. Mr. Ibrahim, great, we are waiting for you, great. It's unfortunately we're a bit busy, great, and inshallah, great.
Yeah,
I've already experienced teaching online, and inshallah we shall benefit from your experience too.
Okay, thank you so much. It's a pleasure. I have been trying to reach you and to be part of this, and most of the meeting I was on the road coming from work, so it's only now that I'm sitting in my desk. Okay, good. So as you said, I want just to add something to what you have said concerning exposure to language. One of the most important elements is that we should not try to give students too much. This is one of the most important things I have learned. For example, sometimes teachers want to teach, but they want to show that they give a lot to students. And here lies the problem. So, for example, I have used some textbooks in the past, like Interchange and so on. And I noticed that, for example, if just you want to teach 3 or 4 sentences, it can take a unit. For example, just what's your name? My name is, where are you from? I am from. So it's not, you are not going to give them many things at once. You just hit them with small words and give them too much exposure to language, and they learn naturally. By the end of the unit, you find that they have grasped one dialogue. For example, they can introduce themselves, they can introduce someone, and so on. So this is one of the things that I want to add to what you have said, to exposure. So if there are certain questions, I was not present in the first 20 minutes, I guess, or 25 minutes of the presentation, but if there are certain questions that I can answer, it's a pleasure for me to.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ibrahim. Thank you. Great. Yes.
Yeah, this idea of like talking about the exposure is like one of the principles of the naturalistic approach to learning. So as Rashid said, there's like a period where it's called like a silent period, where learners like should. Do you hear me, guys? Okay.
Yeah, actually.
I thought I was unmuted. I thought I was muted. Okay, so there's like a certain period of time where learners like have to be exposed more to language, as you did, Mr. Abdulwahid. You have, as you said, you let your students exposed to language for more than 6 months, which is really a good idea. So this really contradicts with the idea of inspectors that say that you have like to increase your TTT and decrease your TTT and increase the SST, which is really does not work, especially for beginner learners, because the only source of knowledge is you. So they have first to listen to you more, and then after a certain period of time, then they can like produce the language. So that's it. What do you guys think?
Okay, guys. All right. So I think the time is running a little bit, right? So let me share very quickly some, like 1 or 2 videos, great, and then move on to the next step is to schedule, inshallah, great, the demo lessons for tomorrow and see who is going to take charge, let's say, of teaching and trying, great, this experience. I got some nice and students here, great, whom I taught, great, some of them from Saudi Arabia, great, most of them are from Saudi Arabia, from the Arab Gulf in general. Okay, so let's take a look at, the way the students.
Yeah, go on.
Hi.
Hi, how can I help you?
I need a t-shirt.
Okay. In a specific color?
Yeah, yes, I like it in a pink.
You like it in pink?
Yes.
Okay. And what size are you?
Medium size, please.
Okay. Wait a minute, please. Here it is.
How much is it?
It's $15. Is that okay?
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
All right. Welcome. Great. You're welcome. نقول thanks, نقول okay, thanks, and then we say welcome. Very good. You've done a great job, Watin. It's an excellent job. Right. That's very nice.
All right. Let's see another sample. Okay. Here. Excuse me. Some group of students somewhere. Great. Let's take a look at them. Great. Kids, sometimes the element of fun and gamification, maybe if I would add
1, 2.
If I would add a principle to all the principles we talked about when it comes to young learning, right, or young student learning and so on, I would add this principle of notion of gamification. The classroom, when it is gamified, students are highly motivated. It's not, because kids like to play and so on, right?
2, 3, go on.
Let's see, guys, another clip here.
Hello.
Hello.
What's
here the importance of using props and real objects and so on, especially everything related to animals, means of transport. This works with kids a lot.
your name?
Kenan.
Where? How old are you?
9.
9, 6, 7? Okay, that's very nice. Tell me, which animal do you like?
Blue and pink and yellow.
No, I'm not talking about colors. Which animal?
Okay, here, the last thing, maybe. All right.
easy سهل right فأحسنت استعمال الكلمة right على here شعر كذا وشعر كذا طويل قصير لونه and so on ثم العينين وكذا right.
An issue here, there is one issue related to the first language. This is again a huge debate, a hot debate related to the use of first language. According to my experience, when I dealt with the students from Saudi Arabia, they opt a lot for the use of the first language. They don't have any problem using the first language to explain at all, right? That's really funny, right? But however, Moroccan, students as teachers, as we are trained that, we should try to avoid using the mother tongue as possible. However, their curriculum, right, is also in terms when it comes to culture too, their curriculum is highly imbued with the Saudi Arabian culture. You rarely find something relevant to, the other countries. They use the Arabic names mostly and so on, Ali, Ahmed, and so on. But for us, right, we try to, maybe apply this notion of comparison using, both cultures together. Okay, so that's it. Maybe the last great one is, let me show you here, great. Maybe the kid, great, my kid somewhere, right? We were interacting and then just to have an idea about, right here, mixed videos. Yeah, great. Yes, yeah, here I think,
Hey, what's wrong?
All right, yes. Okay. Let's see.
Hey, what's wrong with you?
I was broken. This one, it's a little bit funny, maybe, right?
I told you, Mr. Policeman, that is
something very important is a question of situations and so on, gamification situations, role play, right? When they assume that they are playing a certain role, right? They really act and they behave just like that and so on, right? They are highly, they are likely to engage in situations and express themselves.
dear Mr.
This is a very short video, great clip here with my kid, right?
Policeman, that it's not my fault.
It's your fault. No, clean all of this fault.
It's not my fault.
It's your fault, or are you back here to the prison?
To the present?
Yes.
Are you going to give us some cakes in the presents, Mr. Policeman?
I give you just
What?
toys, broken toys.
Broken toys.
Take this.